Hello, you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I will be talking about Sony's recent state of play, Street Fighter 6, Star Wars Wedge's Gambit by Michael A. Stackpole, and more. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to be notified when future episodes are released, and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. I want to start off this episode by saying that I apologize for being a little late. I was dealing with some technical issues with my computer and laptop crapping on me a few weeks ago, and I've been using the podcast or making the podcast a lot on my phone, and that became a little bit of a hassle. So I went out and bought a new laptop just for this occasion. I went out and purchased the Alienware M17R5 AMD gaming laptop. I figured it was probably had enough specs to at least run a few games and be able to handle possibly some live streaming or better video recording kind of stuff. And I just really wanted a workstation where I could properly set up and record the podcast here because doing it on my phone was becoming very strenuous. You had like middle through multiple apps at one time, and on that one small screen is pretty difficult. And it worked out for, the first 10 weeks, but now we're on to bigger and better things. A link will be down in the description. I'm not sure if they're still doing a Memorial Day deal like how I got it, but the link will be available if anybody wants to buy or experience the laptop. It's pretty good. It's got RGB keyboards and pretty good speakers. It comes with a plethora of gaming options for people who are super gaming enthusiasts. I just plan to mostly play Civ 6 and stuff like that on this. I'm not really gonna go out and buy Final Fantasy 16 or any of the new games on this laptop. This is gonna be more of like a casual kind of thing. It's mainly for the podcast. This is for you guys, something that I wanted to give myself a little bit easier time putting the podcast together. That'll mean you guys get better content and faster. So maybe now I can finally stick to a schedule. But yeah, so I did get this, and I just hope it works out. It's working pretty well as right now. I'm recording on it, not on my phone, and that's pretty damn cool. Let's hope it works out. I hope this laptop's durable. I don't plan on bringing it out with me anywhere, but that was kind of the point. If I had to go somewhere, right, it's better than have the laptop and bring it with me so I can plan notes or even like for tabletop games and things like that. PC is very bulky and stuff, so I think I'm very happy with the purchase of this laptop. So let's go right into the episode because there were a lot of things to talk about. There were a lot of things that I want to say to you guys because the gaming industry has changed. The gaming industry has become a different place now since PlayStation has recently shown off their showcase earlier this month. What is it? May? It was like a week ago. It just became June now. Damn, time flies. 2023 has become halfway done now. But Sony did just change the game. Maybe not in some ways that you would expect. I certainly was a little more disappointed with what they shown off this year. I was hoping for more surprise hits, surprise announcements, and maybe not so much like original video games, like original content. I think we saw enough of that with games like uh, what is it, Forsaken, that came out on the PS5. I didn't play that game, but it's definitely one of Sony's more original titles that didn't really stick, right? Because I obviously that game probably had some development issues, and it just came out in a relatively poor state. I haven't played it, but I heard that the gameplay is pretty fun. Like it's well put together, so you can have a fun time experiencing it. But maybe the story or the world's presentation and the open world is just not up to par with a lot of other games that you would see. But I don't want to harp on that game. The game's out, and now we got to look into the future for Sony. Sony had a lot of big titles throughout the last few years. God of War Ragnarok is one of them. Returnal for me is a big one. And they had Spider-Man 1 that came out in, what was it, 2017, 2018. And they just turned off the trailer for that, like the full-fledged gameplay trailer. We got to see the game running, and it looks gorgeous. That's one of the biggest titles that they announced at the showcase or shown off. I wouldn't say announced because we knew about the game a year ago. We knew it was going to come. It was one of those games where we knew it was going to get a sequel. Spider-Man was inevitable to come out, and that's probably where I draw the line with PlayStation, like where I see where they kind of hit a limit with what they could show at their showcase because they didn't have those big, exciting announcements. There's nothing that really came out from nowhere, something that felt like it was out of left field and surprising. They didn't really feel like they had that. And maybe the other game that people will probably equate to this would be Metal Gear. They recently announced that there's going to be a slew of new Metal Gear games. Thank you, Konami, for pushing the button and finally doing something that's relatively positive instead of just sitting on the properties and letting your producers and directors go for whatever reason. Um, but looks like Konami's got their head out of their ass and they're finally putting out uh, games that we want. I know that they announced last year or earlier in December that they were doing a slew of Silent Hill games, and I think that is too much. They announced like seven Silent Hill projects, not even just games. They announced like an interactive kind of game, kind of like Telltale. They announced a new movie, like a new Silent Hill movie. I don't know. That's so odd. On top of that, there's like five other games, and that's far too many. That's extremely too many, and I think that's probably the worst case scenario that we can see for a video game company and Konami right now. But on the other hand, they did announce that they're doing a remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. They're calling it Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, and I think if anybody here has been a fan of the recent Final Fantasy VII remakes or the Dead Space remakes that came out within the last couple of years, you'll probably understand what kind of remakes this is going to be. I think Metal Gear Solid Delta is going to be a remake in line with Final Fantasy VII remake and Dead Space remake because I hope that it's going to drastically change the gameplay. Not a whole lot, but I hope it improves it. But then also the overall experience, the story, the level design, the gameplay mechanics. Dead Space even did a huge overhaul on audio. Obviously, Final Fantasy VII is a big departure from a turn-based RPG into a more action-oriented character RPG, and I think that that's really phenomenal that Metal Gear is probably going to go around that route. I hope so, and I hope it sticks to that cool uh, military espionage kind of wackiness that it has, and I hope it plays with it really well. This will be the first, I would say, mainline Metal Gear game since Metal Gear 5. And I say mainline because it's still just Metal Gear 3, as far as I know. But I hope that they add new things for the story, new things for just the world, and all kinds of things to make the players, returning players, feel like they're not getting chipped out of their money because this should be a proper remake. Metal Gear Solid 3 and all the other Metal Gears are so highly regarded as one of the best video games ever that Sony has in their catalog. And I think that it's going to be really disingenuous to take this kind of remake and not put it into the kind of spotlight or give it the kind of attention that it deserves with its gameplay and its story and all that kind of stuff. Konami and Sony did announce that they're going to be doing a Metal Gear Master Collection, which I think is going to cover the first three Metal Gear games, like the original games. I'm not sure what that's going to be about. I think they're going to add more. It's only like volume one of the collection, so I imagine after the first few Metal Gear games, we're probably going to get Metal Gear 4, which has never been on anything besides the PS3, and Metal Gear 5, and then maybe hopefully not Survive. I know people don't like that game, but it seems like Konami is making the right choices with titles that they have, and they're trying to make the best out of the situation that they're in because they don't have a whole lot of games that they can really promote and put out there. And I do also think that they announced way too many. Konami, you announced like seven Silent Hill games, and you now just announced a new Metal Gear remake on top of a Metal Gear port collection. Like, slow your roll. That's really just it. I think that over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of Konami titles out there, and I hope they're great. I really hope they're great. Not a lot of the Silent Hill games had gameplay. I think it was all CGI kind of stuff, CGI trailers, and same thing with the Metal Gear Snake Eater trailer. That was also mostly just CGI kind of cinematic. But those are probably the two biggest titles that they had at the showcase of things that were were known about. I think those like you can say for a fact that we knew a Metal Gear remake was going to happen. I'm surprised it was Metal Gear 3 instead of, Metal Gear Solid 1 or a remake of just the collection and just doing all three games in one. I'm extremely surprised that they're doing it this way. And I'm pretty let down over what they shown off because Sony has so many other titles that they could do. I am a massive, massive Ape Escape fan, and to see that franchise just be held underwater for so long, it makes me sad. Especially when you talk about Sony now trying to switch into their backwards compatibility log on their consoles, where you subscribe to their subscription services and you get to play a lot of their older games either through the cloud or download them. PS1 games too, even PS3 and 4 games are on there. And you see so many titles that just feel lost. Crash Bandicoot got some new games, but they're on multi-plat now, so that's relatively fine. Jack and Daxter's gone. Ratchet and Clank was just put onto PC, which is really good. Really good for Ratchet and Clank. I'm glad to see that kind of franchise be highly regarded. I just got into that game a while ago for the first time. It was my first Ratchet and Clank game, Rift Apart. My good friend was a big, massive. My good friends were big Ratchet and Clank games, and they would tell me to play them, and I finally got to do it. I played the original, that was remade on the PS3. That was really great, and then I played Rift Apart, which was also really fun. And now I'm trying to slowly go through Going Commando and the other sequels. But you see, like Ratchet and Clank should be the kind of game that's getting the same treatment. Uh, I say that other games should be getting the Ratchet and Clank treatment, where they get very, very well designed titles. I mean, Rift Apart is phenomenal as a PS4 title. It looks amazing, and it's pretty sad to see that the lineup was just not there for Sony. We have a lot of games that we knew about, like Final Fantasy 16 was still shown off again. We've known about the game for like 4 years. 4 years. It's too much. It's too much. We've been seeing that game for far too long. We're getting a lot more gameplay for it, a lot more demos are coming out, and I'm excited for it as a Final Fantasy fan. As an RPG fan, I'm just excited to play it. But I've it's been too long. I've been seeing it too much. Dragon's Dogma 2 was shown off. Actually, gameplay. I mean, absolute gameplay. We were so surprised. I thought we were going to see gameplay for that game like 6 years later after it was announced. When December, maybe sometime earlier than that. Um, I'm going to try and play the first game on my Switch because I still never finished it. But I am excited because it seems like Capcom is doing a lot of the right things right now. Also with Resident Evil 4 VR being announced, that seems really great. I'm not a big fan of VR, but I think that VR is absolutely the future for gaming. I just think maybe the technology and the controls just aren't there. But I am excited because it looks cool. I love Resident Evil 4, and if I end up getting a PlayStation VR, I'll definitely try and get Resident Evil 4 VR or Resident Evil 8 VR, like working somehow, and try those games out. Alan Wake 2, another multi-plat title that's coming out. I love Alan Wake, and we saw some gameplay for it this time, and I'm extremely excited because it looks mysterious, it looks crazy and scary, and I am so excited to finally get a sequel to this game because it's been so long since we got anything on Alan Wake. Alan Wake was a title that came out originally on the 360. I think you could play on the PS3 at the time. But then it got delisted because of music concerns. It was delisted on digital platforms, so you couldn't buy it at the time, and I still think you can't buy it. I could be wrong on that, but then they had like a DLC kind of Xbox Live arcade game called Alan Wake America's Nightmare, which was phenomenal, extremely fun. A little shorter, but a lot more combat focused. And I think that was great. I hope they take that kind of concept into Alan Wake 2 and really make that game shine because the gameplay of Alan Wake is phenomenal. You use a flashlight to shine on enemies made of shadow and darkness, and when they get illuminated enough, that's when you can do damage to them. So you really have to be uh, concerned about how many batteries you have versus the enemies you're trying to run away from and who you should take down first. It's really well thought out gameplay, and I can't wait to see what kind of technology the year 2023 has for this game. I plan on getting it on the PS5. I think it's coming out on the PS5, so that's probably where I'm going to get it. And of course, Alan Wake ties into the video game Control. If you haven't played Control, it's another video game made by the same developers, the original developers of Alan Wake, and highly recommend that game. It is a very fun action RPG game for anybody who likes like third-person action RPGs. I really don't want to say too much on that kind of game because it's different than Alan Wake, but it does tie into the story. That's all I'll say on those. Assassin's Creed Mirage was shown off for the actual first time. We've been getting so many little teases and little news snippets about Assassin's Creed Mirage that I just kind of feel about Assassin's Creed. It's really cool to see them go to a more return to roots with their Middle Eastern kind of setting. It feels like it's supposed to be like a spiritual successor to Assassin's Creed 1, which I think is the Assassin's Creed that needs the most attention in terms of like a remake. I don't know about a full-blown game, but I feel like this is probably where that's kind of middle ground. They're not going to remake the first game, but they're going to try and get that feel of the first game back, which eh, I think Assassin's Creed's gotten too big for its britches. They've got so many big maps and areas, and if you're a big history buff and you're a big open world RPG guy, that's probably your bread and butter, right? Those big large history games that you could explore. Obviously, it's a niche for somebody out there, but for a casual person who doesn't have hundreds of hours to spend into every single game, uh, I found myself having a little hard time trying to complete the newer Assassin's Creeds. Assassin's Creed, um, what was the newest remake? Valhalla, I still haven't played. Odyssey, I'm in the middle of, and that game is so big. I'm still like it within, I would say, the first few hours of tutorial stuff, and I don't know. I think that game is just far too long. Odyssey was fine. I kind of liked the story for Odyssey. It was fun to follow along, but I definitely found myself being like, okay, I'm tired of literally running or climbing and horseback riding across this big ass map trying to get to some main mission because the side quests are just too much. There's too many side quests. Collectibles are all fine and okay. These games are known for their overabundance of side quests. And I think it's going to be really nice to see Assassin's Creed go into a more kind of controlled environment. I hope they have more, maybe levels, well, better level design, less open world. I think that's probably going to be the best take for Assassin's Creed, but I could be wrong. It could be just another massive RPG where going from one corner of the map to another takes like 8 years, and that's fine. I know people will buy that and play that, and I certainly am intrigued. I just kind of gotten burned out with Assassin's Creed. I after playing Odyssey and the other one is Sonic Skate. I just said it, but after playing them, they really got to be a little too large, and I kind of don't want to delve too much time into them. At least now, I've been kind of thinking about going back to Assassin's Creed 3 or 2, go back into that kind of realm. But Assassin's Creed kind of maybe like a title I'm gonna shelve for a while. Um, but Bungie, a very notable video game company, has just shown off one of their flagship games, one of their first games they ever made, Marathon. They made a remake of it. They announced a remaster that's coming out at some time here at the PlayStation Showcase. And not so much is known in the gameplay. I think if we go back and look at gameplay from the original game, we could probably get some kind of idea. But it's good to see Bungie stepping off of Destiny. That's all I'll say because I think that Destiny was a really good idea. I think maybe execution wise, it could have been better. But it's good to see that they're going to be moving on to something at least different. I'm not going to say that Destiny's like over or dead or anything. I hope that it does continue for as long as it can because it seems like people enjoy it. It seems like the devs enjoy making content for it. Every time I see a trailer for Destiny, it's just wild. Like it just makes no sense. And I know the basic of like Destiny lore just from the first game. Um, each trailer does intrigue me to go back to Destiny, but I don't really know if I'll go back. Marathon does seem intriguing. I wonder what Bungie's going to do with it. Sony did show off something really odd though, and they showed off some more accessories for the PS5. And one of the accessories is kind of like a Nintendo Switch, Steam Deck kind of mobile device. And I hope that it works well, but I don't think it's what we need because it looks like a really bad attempt to try and get into the Switch kind of market. But when we already paid $500 for a home console, I don't really want to be thinking about buying an extra screen for these games. And I imagine that this is just an accessory for the PS5, maybe on the PS6 they'll do some like Nintendo Wii U thing with a gamepad attached to it or a part of the product. But if games aren't made for this hardware specifically, it's not really worth buying. And sure, you can play your games portable and all that stuff, but I feel like if your games are going to be made to be played like on a smaller screen, on a small device that's transportable, the game should be optimized specifically for that device. And I don't see Sony doing that for a lot of third-party titles, let alone their main-party titles. And that's what I want to say on that. That's probably the biggest shock that they announced at the showcase. And that's probably all I really got to say about the showcase in its entirety. They had some other games, but they're smaller titles, not really worth mentioning, to be honest. Especially because we don't know much gameplay on them, other more arcadey and cinematic trailers. But that's Sony's state of play in a nutshell, and I think that they kind of let us down. You know, they didn't have any big, exciting hitters, and that's not to say that they're doing any worse than Xbox or um, Nintendo right now, because I think that in their own market they're doing really well. They're doing really great on that single player experience. I mean, God of War Ragnarok, Spider-Man's coming out soon, and it just seems like they're going to be really slating up some single player games, and that's nice. That's really great. Um, but in terms of like this year, it's just Spider-Man. We only know Spider-Man is coming out this year, and then next year it's just like it's a toss-up, little toss-up of what could be shown off. Xbox, I know, is having their showcase soon. Nintendo is unannounced, and you guys can expect me to try and talk about all the latest announcements that's going to happen within this E3 time frame because that's what this is. E3 is no longer here, so now all the companies are doing their smaller little showcases for themselves. I am excited to see what Xbox has because they're going to probably come out swinging. I know that they had a big announcement last year that all the games announced would come out within a year. That obviously didn't happen, and they obviously burnt some bridges with some games that came out recently. Looking at you, Redfall. But me, I'm an optimist. I look at the future, and I think that what we have in the future is going to be really good for the gaming industry. Speaking of good for the gaming industry, one of the greatest video game franchises just got a massive resurgence, and that's Street Fighter 6. Capcom nailed it with this fighting game. They nailed it. I mean, when you look at Street Fighter 5 and you look at all the content in that game, you would think that it's not all that much different than Street Fighter 6. You really wouldn't. It has a story mode, it has arcade, it has a functioning online, and it has some accessibility options. It has a massive roster that's relatively pretty good, and you would think that that would be enough. And after the backlash that Street Fighter 5 got, Street Fighter 6 had a lot of weight to pull, a lot of weight to pull, and I think that they did a really great job. It has a proper story mode that's not like added on a year later. Um, and it's not like just cutscenes and a few fights. No, it's like an open world uh, interactive story. You go around fighting AI fighters in this hub world. You go do side missions, collect stuff, and you do fights for the story. Make your own character, which is amazing. Now it's just like Tekken and Soul Calibur now, and that's great. I've never been around for a Street Fighter launch. I just got my first Xbox 360 when Street Fighter 4 came out, and I didn't get that game until a while later, and then I didn't get a PS4 until long after Street Fighter 5 came out. So it's really nice to be here for a launch of a Street Fighter game. And I plan on playing this game for as much as I can, try to give as much attention as I can because I've been trying to get into more fighting games. I've been trying to enjoy more fighting games, learn them, and get more out of them. Not just story or the arcade, but like online as well. I want to get better with some of these characters. So I think I'm gonna, besides my like my character that I created for the story mode, which once I finish doing the story mode, I will try to move him on to the online stuff. But I think my main would be Cammy. She was one of the first characters I tried out, and I like her. She plays very similar to Black Canary in Injustice 2, if anybody's ever played her in that game. And I really like fighting her or playing as her. She's really great. Got some fun Ditto matches with her. There's some wild characters in this game. JP is like some magic Shadowloo user, and he's crazy. He's insane to fight against. Uh, but yeah, I don't really know much about fighting games, to be honest. I don't know all the lingo and all that technical stuff, but I'm just here to play the game. You know, this is really my first Street Fighter game that I'm going to try and learn from the start, and we're going to see how long that lasts. The arcade is pretty fun. All the artwork is so amazing in this game. When I did my first arcade run as Cammy, I unlocked like 20 pieces of artwork. 20. It was just like, here's a piece of artwork. Here's a piece of artwork. Here's a piece of artwork. It was crazy. Um, it really seems like Capcom understands what their fans want out of a Street Fighter game, and it's everything. Because right now it has to be everything. Your title and your franchise encompasses a lot more than just your pro players and their tournaments, a lot more than your scrub lords and whether or not your frame data is fine. I think having a story mode is good for the single player people. I think having an arcade mode is good for just the average fan. I think multiplayer is great for people who want to play with other people, friends, strangers, and have a challenge that they can overcome. Because I think the best form of fighting game is fighting against other people, and that's probably where all fighting games should be. They should look at Street Fighter 6 and other games like it, Mortal Kombat 11, and execute what they've been doing. I know it's hard. I know it doesn't seem like a lot of games deserve that. Last few episodes, I talked about Guilty Gear. It was one of the first fighting games I tried out that's like a little more niche in the genre, and I was baffled by that story mode. Absolutely baffled by how it's just text dialogue after text dialogue and no battles. No battles. But to each their own, that game has some massive lore. I just think a few fights in the middle would have been better. And it seems like Street Fighter 6 does that in a much better regard. But I'm having fun with it. It's a great game. I think people who are interested in it should play it. Now, not to talk too much on specifically video games, let's talk about the other side of my podcast. Now, I know that I'm not sure how many people here really are into this side of the topics I'm trying to talk about, but I'm trying to keep things pretty broad so that I can get as many people, listening or understand that I'm someone who likes so many things. I love so many things. I like video games and I like books. So the book I want to talk about right now is Star Wars X-Wing Wedge's Gambit. And this is the sequel to Star Wars X-Wing Rogue Squadron by the same writer, Michael A. Stackpole. And I would have thought that this book would have been a little better. I was expecting a few more dogfights, in my opinion, because it's titled X-Wing, and I really liked about the first book. It had like 9 different like X-Wing encounters within the book itself, which was fun. I'm not a big action guy, but I really enjoyed having those scenes there because it felt like the characters were trying to think about how they were going to attack their opposition in terms of space battles. That was just really fun, and I really liked the Rebel side of it. It was probably the most enjoyable Rebel kind of book I've read. But then Wedge's Gamble came out, or I'm sorry, I read it. It's been like this book is years old. I wouldn't say came out. I read it for the first time within the last few weeks, and it was much more of an espionage kind of. Uh, I would call it like a spy kind of book. A lot of the characters in it go undercover onto a planet, and it doesn't have so much to do with space battles and all that. It has a lot more to do with, hiding and secrets and saboteur. Because these are terrorists, these are rebel cells. Um, say what you will, but they technically are terrorists in that kind of regard. They're fighting for the good, but a lot of what they do kind of stems, you know, over to terrorism. Not to say that the Empire is any better. The Empire is worse, worse in a lot of regards. But it was a book that I was excited to read, and that uh, I wouldn't say disappointed me, but it didn't have what I wanted out of it specifically. I don't know if I'd read the next one. Um, it does leave off on a cliffhanger. It kind of stops in the middle of the story, and that's definitely a reason to go back and read this book and then go into book three, whichever one that is. I don't even know, but it's an okay Star Wars book. It has a lot of stuff. I think what my favorite moment of it is that it's one of the only Star Wars media I've seen discuss the interspecies relationships and interspecies sex within Star Wars, and that was really nice. It was a moment between some characters, and that was really, really like human and very thought provoking. I really enjoyed that bit of it. That's probably my favorite part about Witch's Gambit. So kudos to you, Michael Stackpole, because Star Wars is one of those things where it should have flavor like that. It should have that cool nuance. You know, you have all these species that just interplay with each other in terms of politics and war and all these things. And for the most part, you just see humans. You just see humans, and I'm tired of seeing humans. No more humans. No more humans. So I finished Witch's Gambit, and I've been reading a book that's been out for, I would say, a few years, maybe a few decades, and it's a book that inspired a very prominent horror movie franchise, and that is The Ring by Koji Suzuki. In this book, I'm only maybe 40 pages in. Um, I'll try and finish it before the next episode, but I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. It has a lot more tension than the movies. Obviously, the movies are like a more far different medium, right? Like visually, it's different, and like the information it tells is different. But I'm enjoying reading the book a lot more than I ever did watching the movies for The Ring. Um, it's almost the same story. A uh, I imagine a videotape goes around and starts to kill the people that who watch it 7 days after, and the story revolves around a newspaper journalist who starts to piece together these weird incidences of deaths. Uh, and I haven't gotten too far into it, but he does start piecing together that these deaths are connected in some way. If you haven't seen the Ring movies, give it a shot because those are probably the best, one of the best early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2010s movies you could find. The Ring 1 and Ring 2 are pretty good. I know there's like Japanese sequels out the gate, and then there's even like the new recent The Ring movie, which is meh. But in terms of book, this is phenomenal. I'm loving it. I think horror books are really entertaining, and I think they're really trippy. I think that imagining what's scary is pretty cool rather than watching a scene of what's scary. I did just see the new Spider-Man movie last night, and that was phenomenal. Absolutely the best Spider movie there. You know, I think they get better and better each every time, but it's a movie you should see. It's animated so well, so well. I mean, the art style, just like the last one, changes like every 30 seconds. You know, and everything's in motion, and there's always a character doing something on screen. Something's always moving. Action is choreographed very great for a animated movie. Man, absolutely phenomenal. In all honesty, you forget you forget that it is a part two. It's like a part two movie. It's a part one to a two-parter. You forget, just like Avengers Endgame when that first came out. You absolutely forget that is a cliffhanger. That's how you do it. I just want to say that while we talk about Spider-Man, that's one of the greatest movies out there. There's so many Spider-Man Easter eggs. It's a Spider-Man magnum opus right there. Absolutely. It would not even like to the next half. This is entirely another half. Which, to be honest, I think what's gonna be the half that brings the entire universe together, because I won't say spoilers, but there are some Easter eggs there that will make a lot of fans happy. A lot of fans happy. I love Spider-Man. I will see every Spider-Man movie till the day I die. Um, I can't even wait for the new Spider-Man game or part two. Or I'm sorry, I guess part three, right? Of Across the Spider-Verse. I don't have much else to talk about, but I did find a few things worth mentioning. I'm not really sure how many people would enjoy listening to me talk about this, but I found some articles that I feel like we should talk about, and I'll link them into the description so anybody else can read them. But I just want to talk about some things. IGN recently just put out an article saying that Activision Blizzard report shows 29 harassment incidents after Bobby Kotick's no systemic issue claim. And I'm not going to go over the full article here, but the gist of it is that the frat boy culture and sexual harassment over at Activision Blizzard has not uh, stemmed any lower than previous reports. It's in fact increased apparently, and that's not good. That's not good. It's not good so much in the fact that I don't want to buy Diablo 4. Like I don't want to buy Diablo 4 because I don't want to give Activision Blizzard more money just based on this. After all the other things that they did, after delisting Overwatch 2 and things like that for whatever reason, uh, if the video games and the content that they're providing is not good, that is a perfect reason to not give them the money. You shouldn't give them money for bad product, but I also don't want to give them money for making bad products and also on top of that being really bad people. That's just it. I kind of used to be an Activision Blizzard fan. I liked Call of Duty games. I liked all the spin-off Activision games they used to do. They did like Crash Bandicoot games and all that. Blizzard's kind of cool. They did the Star Wars. No, they did World of Warcraft. Did they do a Star Wars game? I don't know why I'm associated Blizzard with Star Wars. I feel like Blizzard might have had a Star Wars game at some point. Maybe I'm blanking on that, but I'm not sure. It's a really shitty time to be a Activision Blizzard fan because if you're a fan of any of their games, you're a fan of them and you're a fan of their money and the content that they put out. But it's really shit to see them kind of shit the bed with that. You would think it would stop, but that's really upsetting. Um, don't go out there and harass people. Um, and if you read this article, don't go out there and harass the writer of the article or the employees of Activision Blizzard. Just don't do that. You know, just try to be nice to each other. Try to be respectful and understanding that everyone's human. Everybody's living in their own personal world that we could never imagine living in. And I think this is kind of the kind of humanity that we need to have in the world. It's just understanding and acceptance. So besides that article, I have one more article I want to talk about, and that's Vice's uh, thought-provoking article that came out in 2017 on how inmates play tabletop RPGs in prisons where contraband includes dice and pens and papers and that kind of stuff. Uh, Tabletop RPGs are contraband in most prisons, and that's crazy. Um, I can imagine like pencils and sharp objects being contraband, but um, they say here that in one Idaho State Correctional Facility, a their handbook states that uh, prohibited activities are horseplay, gambling, or games of chance, manufacturing of dice, dominoes, chess sets, cards, or other form of games, including role-playing games, are banned. And that's just awful. If I was put into a prison and I couldn't play an RPG game, I would probably just kill myself. I would just be like, nope, I just can't be doing that. Obviously, not don't go to prison. That's probably step one. But apparently, the contraband in these prisons for these kind of events have gotten so uh, in high demand that they've started making like handmade dice. They have like um, little paper folded on paper clips made into dies. I'll post pictures at some point. I'm not really sure how to do that. Like I said, I've been doing learning the whole podcast video editing process from the get-go. So if the video isn't super well made together, I apologize. It's mostly audio. I will try to get some pictures so you guys can see, but they do have like handmade dice here in the article, and they even show off like handmade spinners for dice. Like if you ever played what's the game of life where you spin the spinner. It's kind of like that. I've never played a tabletop game using a spinner as a dice. But that seems cool. Um, it even goes into say that like it's too on the nose uh for being in a prison and playing in a prison escape kind of campaign. Uh, that seems like a really fun kind of idea to do in a prison. But I don't know. I found this to be a really interesting read article. I found it to be extremely interesting that there's enough people out there in the prison culture that like RPGs or tabletop games to go and make their own like set pieces and game pieces, miniatures and things like that within the cell walls of their prison. You know that's some dedication. That is some absolute dedication that they have. And I love RPGs. I always found them to be the ultimate form of video game, like the ultimate form of escape. And I think anybody who likes some kind of franchise out there or likes to role play in some regard, who's always wanted to be a character, or even just pass the time. It's just a fun game to play with friends or strangers and stuff if you're all obviously respectful and understanding of what the rules will entail. But I hope each and every prisoner out there gets a chance to play an RPG. That seems like a really good time. Well, I gotta say that's probably the end of the episode. Uh, these are recorded in a pretty haphazard way, but I'm trying to find a good middle ground with time and what kind of what abilities I have for making the podcast. The audio part's easy. I can just speak. I'm sure my voice is grating to most people, but here it is, and I promise to try and make the videos a little more entertaining, a little more visually, uh, entertaining. But this is just a small pastime. I'm not sure. I'm just recording this stuff and putting them online. Whatever I want to talk about. But if you guys really enjoyed this episode and look forward to hearing me talk about the future video game showcases that come out and whatever future video games uh, will be coming out, as well as books I'll be reading, um, please stay tuned. This has been episode 11 of the Gamer Librarian podcast. Be sure to subscribe for updates on future episode releases. Leave a like and comment on what games or books I should talk about in the future. Thank you, and see you next time.